My name is Jill Bender. I am a software engineer currently working on a distributed storage solution. And throughout my many years of hiring for technical roles, I have gained some practical and research-backed strategies for helping you increase the diversity of your technical hiring pipelines. Today, I will discuss the following topics. First, I will answer a common question about inclusive hiring. Why? Why should you care? Second, I will define what an effective job description should do for your technical roles. Then we'll discuss some common problems with job descriptions and their impacts. And then last, I'll provide you with some tools so that you can start improving your own job descriptions today. So why should you care? Let's start with the reason why you should make a change in your job advertisements. The people in this group work on one of the world's most important systems that connect people all over the world. We as technologists are solving hard problems for the future benefit of society at large. With that in mind, let's start with a business case for diversity. First, to stay competitive in this ever-changing tech landscape, businesses constantly need to innovate. Innovation requires nonlinear, novel thinking and adaptability, and hiring people that can bring a new perspective to a problem helps us innovate. Second, there are plenty of studies that show diverse teams that have a focus on inclusion see an increase in performance. And with all that in mind, diversity in companies is also associated with increased revenue, more customers, all those great things. However, even though this research is clear, it's also important to note that solely increasing the numbers of underrepresented people in your workforce does not automatically produce benefits. You can't just take an add diversity and stir approach while business continues as usual. In order to see these gains in effectiveness or financial performance, there may be underlying cultural issues that are hindering innovation and performance. Fundamentally, you need to choose to improve diversity because it's the right thing to do. And you need to grow your organization's culture along with the changes in your hiring process. Why am I here? I'm here in large part due to my father. My dad, Robert Bender, has worked for decades as a network operations manager. My dad brought me to my first NANOG when I was in high school in 2008, which helped me to pursue my career in computing. It was inspiring for me to meet so many talented engineers and technologists. When I graduated, I started on my first full-time engineering position where I was one of only a few female engineers and a team of 300. This is a picture of my first engineering team. This is a group of incredibly talented people who in so many ways helped me lay a solid technical foundation for where I am today. But I was starting to feel the effects of isolation at work. Here you can see a comment from my aunt on Facebook, and I posted this photo. She said, "There are no other women in those photos. That is freaky." And I went to my manager at the time and asked, "Why don't we have more women on our team?" He explained to me that he just wasn't seeing women apply for the positions. It wasn't that he didn't want to hire them. It's that he wasn't even getting any applications in his inbox. It was then that we started implementing some simple changes that I'll share with you today to improve gender and racial diversity on our team. So what's the problem? Now that we understand why you should care about improving diversity of your hiring pipeline, let's dive into one simple place where you can start to make a change in your workplace. This diagram outlines the leaky pipeline. I often hear managers, like my manager, that the reason they can't hire a diverse team is due to the pipeline problem, that there simply aren't enough women or people of color in their hiring pools. While this certainly is true and deserves continued work for K through 12 and college programs, there are many actionable steps that you can take today to at least ensure that your hiring pipeline is representative of the tech industry's population at large. There are highly qualified candidates out there, and we are here to learn why they may not be applying for your jobs. On to effective job descriptions. One of the first steps in hiring pipelines is the job description. What is the purpose of a job description, first of all? It is not to scare people off. You may want to welcome in as many qualified candidates as possible while still keeping your applications at a reasonable number to sift through. In my team, recruiters were telling us that they didn't have enough candidates from underrepresented groups applying. We were actually hindering ourselves by treating this job description as a weeding out tool instead of a welcoming tool to bring in as many qualified candidates as possible. And these weeding out tools, really what they do is they maintain the status quo using coded language. So when you're using gendered words in a job advertisement, maybe not intentionally, it actually prevents a level playing field for all who are looking at your position. Imagine the face of a person when I say the following titles: lawyer, nurse, doctor, teacher, engineer. You may have a specific gender of a person in mind when I said those names, even though gender jobs are generally on the decline. A careless language use might cause organizations and companies to miss out on well-qualified applicants for these positions. So the question is, can we write better ads? Yes, you definitely can. We are creating the future, and we need a diverse representation to create a diverse tomorrow. Environmental cues such as demographics, the makeup of a room, and gendered wording can subtly cue that one does not belong. But how do we spot this gendered wording in advertisements? Don't worry, I'm here to give you some examples. What you want to do when you're approaching writing a job description, or maybe taking an old job description that your organization has and you're trying to improve, or maybe put it out for a new position, is to deliberately add language that appeals to women and underrepresented groups. Instead of using stereotypically masculine words like guru or hacker or ninja, I don't think that really any of us in the industry think of ourselves as a ninja. It might just be some clever marketing copy that somebody came up with at one point that people think will be appealing, but it's actually not. So here are some specific examples of gendered wording in job ads with some suggestions for what to use instead. So it's very common for words like tackle or dominant or strong or expert to come up in job ads. Personally, my least favorite is rock star. It comes up all the time in software positions. And as soon as I see that, I kind of run the other direction and don't really want to apply for that job. So other things that you can include instead might be phrases like collaboration or striving for, or an impact, something that will have meaning, building emotional awareness like empathy, or thinking about what that team environment's going to be like, and use welcoming words like join us or even welcome. That way more people will want to apply for your positions. Now, that's not to say that I, as a woman, can't be those things, but we're also dealing with stereotypes here. So just try to include more balanced language, if not just index over onto the typically more feminine coded words or more neutral words. And you'll see quite an impact in the applicant pool that you have for your job postings. It's been shown by research that excluding that stereotypically male language does not actually change men's desire to apply for a job, but it definitely does turn women away from applying to your position. So another strategy you can do, besides just looking at specific words, is looking at phrasing and intent behind your message. So try to use friendly and welcoming language. For example, here are some real snippets from real job postings for software engineers. So let's dig into each of these examples and why they might be problematic. First, we have change the world or go home. Not exactly the most welcoming language to invite candidates to apply. Instead, use a call to join your team, something a little bit more welcoming, a little more friendly. Second, we have a hyperbolic example that is trying to make an opportunity sound challenging. Now, I'm an engineer. I love problem solving, but I want to solve the fun kind of problems and not get stuck in a bad situation. So instead, mention the impact that somebody might have in your role. And then in this last example, it's telling someone that the job isn't right for them. I would recommend not telling a candidate what they can or can't do. Let them make that decision for themselves. Instead, describe what your team culture is like. Maybe say it's open-ended and describe your day-to-day atmosphere. HP did a research study that's pretty well quoted. What they found is that for their positions, women were only applying to jobs if they met 90 to 100% of the requirements listed in a job posting. The more bullet points that you add to your requirements in a job posting, the more you could be unintentionally weeding out qualified candidates for your job. So with this in mind, one question that you should ask yourself when you're writing your job postings is that really a requirement? And yes, you should ask yourself this question about every requirement that you have on your job posting. Every one of those bullet point items may be perceived as a checklist. Some candidates will think that they need to check all of those boxes in order to apply. But often when you ask a hiring manager, that's not the case at all. They just listed qualities that they would want in an ideal world. And for many postings, a person just may not exist that can meet that long list of criteria. So watch those bullet points when you're writing your postings. Another thing to ask yourself is to challenge assumptions commonly made. For example, is it possible for somebody without a college degree to learn the skill? What might the equivalent experience be for that role? So just keep in mind, some people will only apply to your posting if they meet 90 to 100% of those criteria. So one way to help you reduce the number of bullet points in your posting is to really think through the requirements for your job. I know that when a new rec comes up, there's a huge rush to get that posting out so you can start sourcing candidates immediately for your already understaffed team. But take a little bit of time, maybe do it before the posting goes up so that you can start to reuse that position over time and to really think about some measurable criteria for that position. Many postings use the word strong as a way to measure skills, but really what does strong Python skills actually mean to you? Is there a specific coding question you want people to answer? Is there a specific set of knowledge about Python you want them to know? So is there a different way that you can measure that? And when you consider your criteria before your job is posting, you actually improve the quality of hires across the board, not just for diverse hiring. The last thing that you want is for an unqualified candidate to land in your job. So really the last thing that you should be doing is lowering your hiring bar to improve diversity. You actually want to do the opposite. You want to make your criteria measurable and clear so that it helps your team in assessing a candidate. That way you can hold everybody to the same standard. So if you need someone who knows IPv6, say so in the job application. Make sure your interviewers cover it in their interviews. And it really helps everyone get on the same page about what a quality candidate is, and it helps us reduce bias in our decision-making process. Now, another question that I always get when I'm reviewing job postings for other people is, what about my nice to haves? Remember, when people write job postings, they're thinking about an ideal candidate. They have this picture in their mind of somebody who can do it all, do all the things. But when somebody's reading your job posting, those nice to haves, even that in that nice to have section, they're also perceived as requirements. So if you really want them, maybe just keep them privately, don't publish them. If you absolutely have to have them in your job description, put them in a paragraph format, not in a bulleted format. Now, I said I would provide you with some tools. So I reviewed a lot of tips for improving your job descriptions. And so I've provided you here with a helpful checklist that you can use when reviewing your postings. The first posting that you edit may take you a while, but once you've done one, the rest should take you a little less time. An investment of even an hour in reviewing your job postings could make all the difference. So I have some tools here to help you in your journey. To go through this checklist, make sure that you have those measurable requirements in your job postings and try to keep away from your nice to haves and limit those bullet points if you can. Obviously, if it's a requirement for the job, you should keep it in there so that you have a realistic posting for what your job responsibilities will be. Be friendly and welcoming, use lots of we and you statements, avoid corporate cliches like synergy, definitely avoid the word guru or rock star. And a really important thing that you can do in order to encourage more people to apply to your position is once you have this posting ready, send it out to lots of people for feedback. Send it to people from different backgrounds for feedback on this posting. You don't have to do all this editing on your own. You can ask other people for help. And then when it's ready, when you feel like you have a reasonable draft, send it out broadly as you can. Put it on Twitter, send it out to people who are maybe just on the fringes of your network. And then you might get a wider range of candidates applying to your jobs. Other helpful tools that you can use today that will give you a nice visual editing experience for your job postings is things that will highlight maybe problematic terms or help you understand what language you're using in your own postings. There is a paid tool here called Textio. You can see an example where it highlights the potentially masculine wording. It also tells you like to use lots of verbs and an active voice in your posting. It will give you a score on your job posting, and they've got data on lots of different job descriptions that you can use to your advantage. However, if you can't find budget for that, that's totally fine. There are lots of free tools out there that will help you get a somewhat similar experience, like the Gender Decoder and the Hemingway app. These tools are free, and they can help you identify phrases to change in a visual editor. And like I mentioned, another well-tested way of improving your postings is to share your job ad for feedback with lots of different people. That's also free and probably provides you better results. So hopefully you find these tools helpful as you start to edit your own job postings. And in summary, if you really only take away 3 things from this presentation, minimize your bullet points, avoid stereotypically masculine words, use like welcoming language, be friendly, and lastly, circulate your JD broadly for review. Thank you so much for allowing me to join NANOG. This place is very important to me. Thank you also to my former colleague, Caitlin, for helping me develop this talk. If you have questions, please feel free to message me on LinkedIn. And if you're just eager to learn more, there's an amazing report by NC Witt called Women in Tech, The Facts. It's packed with lots of information on how you can help your hiring pipeline and retention for all of your employees. If you would like to look at some of the resources that I used to put together this talk, you can check out the appendix of this talk. It will be posted online. There are lots of great resources from NC Witt, the Anita Borg Institute, University of Michigan, and links to some of the research papers that I mentioned in this talk. And I'll be available now to answer questions from the audience.
Hi. Thank you for your talk. Let's see if we have some questions. So far, I have online, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment from Matthew Petak. Thank you, Jill. This talk needs to be required watching for every technical manager writing job descriptions.
They are helpful tips, and not everyone who gets foisted into management always gets the training they need. So happy to offer it to folks.
Yeah. All right. We have one question in the room. Please state your name and affiliation and ask your question.
Sure. Hi, I'm Brian Fields. I'm, I guess, with Nokia. I'm very happy that I watched this. I was actually going to dip out and not watch it because bias, I guess. But it was really good. One of the things I wanted to bring up, this is more of a comment, and I thought it might be something that could be a talk at some point, but I've noticed this a little bit with female engineers I've worked with, is especially when it comes to, hey, they've got the job, everything's good, they don't negotiate as aggressively or maybe work well negotiating with the hiring manager, whoever. And I find that leaves money on the table. I mean, a quintessential example of this, I have a good friend of mine. Everything was good. She got a job offer, and it was like $5,000 more than she was making. And I said, well, what did you put down? She said, well, they wanted the previous salary history, and I gave it to them. And I said, you're supposed to lie on that. Everybody does that. I said, they can't verify that. And, you know, it's almost as if our educational institutions don't do anything and don't teach people this is probably some of the most important stuff, whether you you're being hired as a Python programmer or network engineer, is if you're in the same ballpark, it's negotiable. And I don't know how to, that needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, but I think that's something that everybody can benefit from, and women especially.
Yeah, that's an excellent comment. One other recommendation that I have to look at is changing the structure of your salary ranges for each position. So based on leveling requirements that, if you really think through those requirements for your job postings, it can help throughout your entire hiring pipeline and up through like performance reviews. If you know what your criteria are for a position, that will help you all the way across the board to help assess performance in interviews and on the job. And building a structure of maybe different salary ranges for what you've assessed that candidate as being can help level the playing field a little bit and say, everyone who is a senior in this role gets a salary that's in this range, which can help reduce some of those socialized things where maybe it's less socialized for women to want to negotiate than maybe it is for men. Not that everyone shouldn't negotiate, because that's an excellent thing to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a comment and a question online. Another comment from Matthew Petak. Great follow-on topic is reviewing resumes with names blacked out to enjoy danger or other biases on the part of the reviewing committee.
Excellent comment. I would highly recommend doing that. There's lots of interesting research about bias and decision-making as it comes to candidates, as it comes to even like technical decisions that we're making. And anonymizing your resumes is a great way to reduce bias.
All right. Okay. Let's see. I've got 2 more questions online and 1 in the room. So the one online question first. This is from Rhonda Silva. Can you share your thoughts on STEM and how this community can help impact girls and women in particular getting into this field to increase diversity in the pipeline?
Absolutely. I was in switching rooms with my dad growing up, and so I am uniquely have always been interested in technology and have had the exposure to that, but not everybody has that. There are some awesome organizations out there helping to get exposure for programming. Girls Who Code is a great organization to support, but also just mentoring people in your community, getting involved and giving a presentation to local schools, maybe reaching out to some school districts that that are in maybe lower income areas to help just open people's eyes to what possibilities are out there and how they might pursue a career in technology.
Okay, thank you. We've got 2 questions at the mic. We are going into lunch, so I'm willing to let these questions run, but beyond that, we're going to have to cut off our time. So first question at the mic, please state your name and affiliation and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, Jill. Thank you for the great presentation. So I'm Laurentia Mensah. I'm from Ball State University. And I totally agree with the survey about ladies going through the checklist to see if they meet the 90 to 100% requirement. My question is, what advice do you have for us, ladies, that have to go through all this requirement to make sure they meet 90 to 100% of that requirement?
The best advice is to, if you see something that you don't meet, but maybe you meet like 60% of the bullet points, just apply. What have you got to lose? They might say no, which I think for those of us who are perfectionists can be really hard to think about that failure, because we always want to succeed and work hard. But just like, it's okay to make mistakes and just try for new opportunities. And you never know who you might meet along the way that might change your direction. So, similar to how hiring managers should ask themselves, like, is that really a requirement? You should ask yourself that same question when you're looking at job postings to say, is this something that I could learn? Or even ask yourself, is this really a requirement for this job? And then just go talk to a real person and ask them, hey, I noticed this was in the job description. can you tell me more about that? And then that might give you a little bit more confidence to actually apply for the role.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We have one more question online and then one in the room. The online question comes from Tony Tauber. Would you consider a follow-up presentation to call out cultural stumbling blocks in workplaces once people are in the job? I'm just hoping you will.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. So last question in the room, name and affiliation and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, Jill. This is Marlene from AWS. I have a question related to what advice would you give employers, like after they have the ideal candidate already recruited? Like, let's say you found this awesome female engineer, but most of your staff is male. How do you provide a career trajectory to retain that person on your team?
Yes, that is a big problem. In that NC WIT report that I mentioned at the end, it talks about the attrition rate for women and for minorities being higher as you go through your career, because there's just other barriers that you face. And you might start a job and on the very first day, somebody looks at you and they're like, oh, you're an engineer? You don't look like an engineer. And all those little things kind of build up to give a sense of like maybe not belonging, which takes a little extra energy every day. And I think the thing that's really helpful is if you have somebody who's there to support you and be an advocate for you, even when you're not in the room. And even starting with this job description, thinking about the language that you're applying for these roles, taking that same amount of thought throughout that hiring pipeline and throughout that retention pipeline to what language am I using in performance reviews? I think a lot of women in particular, or minorities, will hear this person's not technical enough as feedback, or like people aren't perceiving you as technical enough. Well, it's not really specific feedback, and it takes a lot of courage for an employee to dig in with their manager. I think a really good manager, if somebody asks like, hey, what do you mean by this? Well, take a pause and think, that's an interesting question. Let's try to get more clear on what this means and just have clear communication. I think that clear communication and just honest support for your colleagues and collaboration can really help get through a lot of the challenges that an organization might face when they're hiring somebody new for the first time. We're all humans and we all make mistakes and we all have challenges regardless of gender or race. And so if we just support each other as people, I think that can help a lot.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our Q&A. Thank you very much, Jill, for your presentation and your time. Speaking for everyone here, very valuable advice and information. Hope to see you in person or online in the future.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you.